hello.
Sorry. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. How you doing?
Uh, I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, I
So
guess
tell,
I'm
sorry, go
ready
ahead.
for my head chop off or whatever.
So tell me your story. What got you here?
Uh, it's weird. Um I feel like I've been seeking for a long time, but like not really the spiritual seeking till probably the
Okay.
past few years. But just kind of always felt like I was looking for something. I'm a clinical psychologist and, worked really hard to get to this place in my
Yeah.
mind of where I wanted to be,
Yeah.
you know, have three kids, married, own my own home, all that kind of stuff. It was all like, that was all presented to me at a young age and I was like
Yeah.
working towards it.
Yeah.
And then I had a couple like my brother was murdered
Oh, I'm
and
sorry
it
to
kind
hear
of like
that.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
few years ago, but it kind of like sparked a lot of stuff. And I was
Yeah.
always like into spiritual or not spirituality, into philosophy and stoicism and all this other stuff, just constantly like
Yeah.
reading and trying to, figure things out.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, I got into like kind of Buddhism and then Taoism. And then I
Okay.
kind of, then it was like eventually non-duality. It kind of got there eventually.
Yeah. You got to the algorithm.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had these
Pesky
kind of like,
algorithm.
yeah, I had these weird things happen, right? That were
Yeah.
kind of like inexplainable to
Hmm.
my previous belief system and kind of how I constructed reality in my mind.
Hmm.
And then it was like, boom, once that happened, I was like, all right, well, there's something else going on that I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't all bullshit. Maybe there's something. So
Yeah.
then it was just like, then I was just like going and consuming like lots of media and, all that. And then eventually, like, I kind of had all these different things happen, but so I kind of felt like I was on this path or this
Yeah.
journey to some extent. And I watched one of your videos just randomly. I think I don't even remember how it came up, but the kind of like it between the two things, like, I don't remember what you said, but there was something and it just like clicked.
Yeah.
And like for the first time, and I just was like, oh, and then it just all stopped.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any words. And then it was like, okay. And I'm somebody who talks a lot too. So I was like, holy shit, like
You were.
everything I've ever been saying is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
And it was. And so then from then, I was like, well, I should probably like, meet up with him and see like, because part of it was like I had this moment and then all this stuff kind of stopped.
Yeah.
It felt really good. I felt like very calm and then it like, my mind kind of clicked back in,
Of course. Yeah.
and so then I was like,
Yeah.
all right, like, do you have to do that every time you have a thought, or is it just something that naturally kind of falls away after you start to kind of like get,
It's different for everyone,
yeah,
right? Everyone's kind
okay,
of built differently. I'm getting a
yeah,
lot of psychologists too. It's quite fascinating.
yeah,
I even have a child pediatrician that does psychology. He's
okay,
been doing the in-between stuff, right? So the
yeah.
question basically is, what do you believe at this very moment? If you can't reference to the past,
I guess the only thing I would say is that there's something.
what are you even without that belief?
I don't know.
Yeah. So who knows that I don't know?
No one.
Isn't it a belief that's believing a belief?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
I
if
mean,
you're
yeah, I get it. It's like it's just weird.
it is weird. So
Yeah,
what's between a belief and a belief?
this. I,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like whatever this is, that's the thing. Is it's like,
Yeah.
and
So if
and
you can
I,
go to the past or the future, then it's here.
yeah, and I can feel it. So
I know. I know.
that's
Yeah.
why I know it's real,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
because it feels different when
It
I'm.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
And
I don't know how to describe it, but
Yeah. And and if you can't go to the next, then it's always this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
And it's
is
a
which. Okay, so the part that I don't understand, and I understand because you can't really understand it, but
yeah,
like um just having so much exposure to all this non-dual stuff, it's always like I think that's part of the problem, to be honest,
yeah,
because there's just so many other people saying, "Oh, it's this and it's that and it's what's whatever," and
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's all like,
Varying opinions and
yeah,
varying, some people will call it this, some people will call it that. And you kind of like who's telling the truth.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't even know that there is any truth, right?
Exactly. So
Like,
that when you start seeing it, everything is just a belief,
yeah, like the whole fucking thing,
the whole fucking thing. And if you
which is crazy.
it is.
What? Like what?
I
I don't
know. And
like
if you
it's.
look at
Oh
it even
my God.
further, like if you put a magnifying glass into it, you're like, holy shit, every word is made up.
Yeah. No, I get that now. Like that hit me really hard.
Yeah. Oh, it
Um,
did. Okay, good.
yeah, yeah. And but then there was just this like there I yeah, it's weird because there's like this fear that comes up, I guess. And
Yeah.
it's not really fear, but there's just like I don't know if it's just like what do you
Well,
even
there's going
call
to
it?
be some sensations, and the
Yeah.
moment that
Yep.
we hijack it and call it fear, then we
Yeah.
believe it's fear. But what if
Right.
everything is basically unraveled and unnamed and unlabeled? What is it? It goes back into that unknown, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Which fundamentally is like is okay.
It's okay. The way that I
Yeah.
explain it is now, like I keep on changing it. It's like
Yeah.
having
No, I know.
a factory reset of a computer that
Yeah.
everything is running fine again. And then, the operating system or the virus that you think is the operating system is just a virus. And that's what thoughts and beliefs are.
Right.
And then and the pop-up blockers like the in between. So for example, if you come up with a thought, rather than clicking on it, because when you click on it, it's usually porn. Right? It goes and it opens like 20 windows. You're like, shoot. Do you remember
Yeah.
those Netscape, like those when
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
younger?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's everyone's appearance of undoing,
Mhm.
basically. It's the undoing basically of a belief or ideas. Um,
Yeah.
and if you look at the brain, right, there's the left brain and the right brain. So the left brain is like artistic and wholeness and
Yeah.
you know, and the right brain is like I, me, and everything. So in between that, all that, the left and the right does not even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just goes into clarity without words. There's no next, but in the historical narrative, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It does go deeper and deeper. From based from
Right.
people that I've talked to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
wondering about that, like, not
Yeah.
to, because I know like your mind can just latch onto whatever, right?
Yeah.
And
Don't
so,
latch onto it. Don't believe
yeah,
what I
yeah.
say, basically,
No, no,
right?
no, no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I actually wouldn't. That's the
Yeah.
thing is I'm kind of a skeptic anyways. And the
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
reason that I'm
Yeah.
even at this
Perfect.
point is because I had the shit happen to me. And then I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, well, whatever that is different than my normal experience. So
Yeah.
and then of course you're because I didn't know that I did at the moment I I didn't realize it was all just a thought, right? At
Yeah.
all. So I was like, oh, I got to figure how do I get more of that? Like I want
Yeah.
another one of those things because that was
Yeah.
really crazy and it was like a completely different experience than anything I've ever had.
Yeah.
And then of course that didn't work.
Yeah.
And then you just are like going down this rabbit hole of like never ending. I,
Yeah.
I feel like it's like you're on like a hamster wheel
Yeah.
and then you realize you're not a hamster and there's
Exactly.
no wheel.
And there's no wheel.
and, and then you're like uh,
What the hell? Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at, like, and or whatever. I just the next part that's all just kind of I think irrational fear is like, okay, what now? Like, and I
Yeah.
know that's just the next piece, but it's also like, okay,
Well,
Um,
you know what? In the um, it's like when this undoing happened, um, it didn't really happen to me. It happened when I was DJing. I
right.
don't know if you've heard my talk
Yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah.
And then it's that sweet spot when you're thinking and not thinking simultaneously, when everything is
So,
just flowing. Like that's
okay.
where great artists write their
Yeah.
songs when they say
Okay.
all that kind of stuff. And you've seen this before. When you fell in love with your wife, you were just gazing at her eyes probably, and that thing where there's just whatever. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, I know what you're saying. It's
You know what
fine.
I'm saying? Okay, okay, good. Like, so
Yeah,
here it
no.
is. Here it is in its permanent form, basically.
Yeah, so okay. It, it's just this.
It's just this, yeah. Well, what's between this and not this? Because you can't land on anything.
I know, no, I know, I
Yeah,
know, I know. I
yeah,
mean, well, okay. Like when I say this, it's just because I don't know how to talk otherwise. Like
exactly.
I'm seriously like I don't know what to. I'm like I'm not really sure how you do anything without talking. And I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
Like it all seems kind of silly now.
it
Like to be
is.
honest, like I could just start making shit up, like make my own language, and it would be like
Yeah,
more or less the same idea.
exactly. Yeah. This basically ends the seeking for the next.
Yeah,
What's after this? If you look at it, just another thought. Now that you've seen the whole
yeah,
charade, basically, right? It's like a
yeah.
prank, right? It's
Yeah,
like a
it's
big
kind of
joke.
anticlimactic too.
It
Like for
is.
I mean, I felt like that because I had this whole like weird kind of I'm sorry, I'm at my work and the
No
thing
worries.
just it just rebooted. So I was
No worries.
yeah, it was like you know, it felt so intense comparison because it was like I didn't really know what was
Yeah.
so I'm like looking for this like, like explosion of
No, no.
whatever,
That's, you know what?
whatever that
No.
is. Yeah.
That the aha or you know, there is an initial kind of like, wow. I'm saying? If you notice, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, and I've
Yeah.
had that like a lot. And so
Yeah.
it's actually it kind of comes and goes, but it was
Yeah.
still I still think that there was like this part of me that was like looking for something to like flip or
Yeah.
something. And when I
No, no,
saw
no.
that video, it flipped in a different way. Like I had already had these things happening, but the word piece hit me in a
Yeah.
different way because I was like, oh shit, like I hadn't had that experience of like it's just all of this is just going in
Keeps,
this. It's never going to go anywhere. Like
no.
it's just this.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep talking in circles forever.
That's right. Yeah. We can talk about this, ad infinitum and everything, and we'll never figure it out.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
right,
trying to say.
right. Yeah,
Right? I can
which
come up with a whole bunch of concepts, but it will
yeah,
just all be BS.
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually fine never understanding it. Well, the part that's me, whatever that the because that part's still, there's still a person or whatever is still operating this body thing. I don't even know how to describe it, but like that's still there, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like being here and not here simultaneously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good
See,
way of putting it.
yeah. See, the thing that's missing, what I'm saying, is that, when you hear kind of like non-duality, it's very absolutist, right?
Yeah,
So
right,
somebody will say it's all awareness, and then somebody will say there's no one
yeah,
here. But they
right.
forget to continue the narrative of like there's no one here, but it does feel like someone's here.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
Are we wouldn't even have all this shit that we made up if it didn't feel like
exactly.
that.
If there's no sense of separation, then we'll be banging into walls and
Yeah,
crashing into cars or falling into what I'm saying,
yeah, of
bridges, right?
course.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm
and I
saying?
think the idea of the separation piece is the part that you know, I get it like intuitively,
Hmm.
but it doesn't feel like that in the
Yeah,
same way. So there's
yeah,
like this that was part of my mind was like, oh, well, okay, I understand it.
yeah,
Well, I maybe don't understand it, but whatever. But like there wasn't like this felt experience of I am everything or whatever people say.
yeah, yeah.
So it was like, I don't know,
I had
whatever.
that experience 20 years ago that I am everything, I am God. But it's something that I heard from someone, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. There
Yeah,
was, so it was like a passed on, like, I'm like, oh, I guess this is what they call enlightenments. And I believed it. And I
yeah, of course.
meditated and I meant, and I, you
Yeah,
know, um, but it was so wild when I lost it. I was like, what the? And I just went spiral into depression and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
have a friend who kind of was like, somebody I was talking to about this
Mm.
stuff because he's kind of into and he had a similar experience and he was telling me about it. And then he just like, he had it for like a year, for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, I did too. Yeah.
And then it just like dropped.
Yeah.
And then he was, and it was like, I don't remember what he said. He had some thought that there was something different about him than everything else. And then immediately it was like back.
Exactly. Yeah. When for me it was when that I should be blissful all the time. And I was blissful for quite a while because I was,
Yeah.
when you're giving away your wealth, you know what I'm saying, and letting go of everything that you're helping people on the streets and then you're
Yeah.
making a change in the world, you know what I'm saying?
And it
Then
feels
you'll be
good.
bliss. It feels great. But the
Yeah.
moment that I heard that my mom had, brain surgery and
Uh-huh.
another one, then my life fell apart. I'm like, well, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did I not do enough good in this world, right? Why am
Oh,
I
okay.
getting punished? Oh, it became personal again, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lost my, you know,
Yeah. And
um,
were you like feeling like karma and all that,
oh
like it
yeah,
should,
yeah, I was
yeah,
selfless
yeah,
service
yeah,
guy, you know what I'm saying?
okay.
So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
was running on a belief that I am enlightened,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
So this
Right.
one destroys all of that.
Right. Which I
This
think,
is the sobriety of that,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, right. Yeah, and I think the thing that I think is hard is that we know people or people have these experiences, so then it
Mhm.
feels like, well, that if it's this absolute truth,
Yeah,
that should be what it's like for everybody, right?
yeah,
Which then creates all this longing and desire because it's like, well,
mhm,
that's not what happened to me, so maybe I'm doing it wrong, or it's
yeah,
supposed to be that, or I'm
yeah.
waiting, or whatever.
And then you know what happens to this when you're listening to a lot of non-duality is that make it so rare that you
Yeah.
have to do this work and that
Oh,
work.
I know. Right. That's why I had a hard time with Buddhism because I'm like,
Yeah.
there's like, oh yeah, well, you just gotta like do this for like 6 lifetimes. And I'm like, well, what the fuck about this lifetime? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like you say that? I don't know. Like, are you sure? Like, how do we know?
When someone said to me, I think this is your last lifetime, Emerson, because you've had a lot of suffering. I'm like, yeah. And then he goes, I think you're a bodhisattva. I'm like, really? I'm like, I guess that's what I am. It's just all delusions, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, right?
No, right. And it makes sense too, because if you really think about it,
Yeah.
like as our brain works, like as how it functions, if there's something it can't explain, it's gonna create a bunch of shit to make it make
Yeah,
sense.
it
Like
does. Yeah. It will
so
create a whole bunch of lies to maintain a truth. That's what it
yeah,
does because the
yeah.
truth is a lie. So it will keep on coming up with a whole bunch of, well, it will take, James, it will 10 more lifetimes for you,
I
and
know, right?
you have to do a bunch of selfless service in this life.
Right, which is so funny because it's like it it's so much easier than that. All you have to say is that if you just stop thinking for
Yeah.
a second,
Yeah.
you'll feel better.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
like because I've been doing some of this with my patients, but just not using any of the terms and stuff, and just
Yeah.
kind of trying to help them like
Feel
basically
free
just
to use the in between.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I would have really used is mostly like just like not identifying with your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And then like when they feel something, just feel it without
Yeah.
judgment or thinking about it, and
Yeah.
then
Without naming
challenge
it.
yourself. Yeah, challenge yourself. What's going to happen? You believe it's going to be awful. You're going to all this stuff, but just see what happens.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
because you'll know either you'll be right and your mind will be like, yeah, that fucker, he doesn't
Yeah.
know what he's talking about, or it'll be different. And like
Yeah.
99% of the time, it's different. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm like,
Yeah.
what if you just did that all the time?
Exactly.
And then I
Yeah.
was like, guess what? This is a secret, but don't tell anyone else. You don't really need therapy.
Yeah. That's
Not at
true.
all.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like about
And
just like
even you know what, even if you look at it right now, you're a psychologist, right? Does shadow work make sense to you now?
no.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't even know what that is.
It's going through your old traumas and everything and healing them, and it
I
doesn't
mean,
make sense.
what I would say is that like if something comes up naturally, whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
just let it be there, and
Exactly.
then and it's fine. But you just
You're
but
not
if you're
gonna
like
dig up a whole bunch of stuff about your childhood and everything. right?
because all
Because
that
that just
does is yeah,
re-traumatizes or re-triggers it basically.
right, or just creates this like barrier now, like,
It
oh,
does.
I have like
That's my triggers. That's my thing. You have a
yeah,
new set of belief systems now.
exactly.
I
Yep.
did shadow work for a long time, and it was just, and at the end of it, I was teaching it, and I'm like, this is pointless, really. And this is just my own experience of it. Maybe it
Yeah.
helps people. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
But
what
from
I
my
would say,
experience, I was like, what?
yeah, I
Yeah,
would say like if in this state of like whatever this is now,
yeah.
it's pointless. But
It's pointless. Yeah,
if you're like mind identified and you're trying to
yeah,
expose yourself
yeah,
to like something that you have been holding off
yeah.
doing, it's helpful. And the
It's
only
helpful.
reason
Yeah,
it's helpful is because you've been avoiding it. So by
yeah,
not avoiding it, the
yeah.
idea of it loses merit and it becomes like not as
Perfect.
big of a problem in your
Well
mind.
said, my friend. Yeah,
But that's
yeah.
it. But it doesn't
But
magically
but when
go
you get
away.
here, that doesn't matter, which is kind of like a conundrum, right? When you get
Yeah.
into this in
Right.
betweenness, directness, or whatever you might want to call
Yeah.
this. I have to change the word soon, man. This has been
No, I
overused,
know
man.
you're gonna
Oh
get
no.
everybody like, I'm in the in between, man. I gotta get or whatever.
It's
Yeah.
like that. It's like that Stranger Things, like the
Yeah.
upside down.
Oh
Hey,
yeah.
I'll call it the upside down.
Oh, you should, but then they might get mad at you like copyright
That's
or
right.
something.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does that,
The inside out, I'll call it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
There you go. That's
yeah,
good. I like
yeah.
that. All right, I need some of that. I'm just joking.
But yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
know
what it
it.
is. It's so simple. And
I
you know
know.
what? It's funny, right? Because I have this guy that's been helping me with my YouTube and everything. And he
Mhm.
goes, just call it instant. You know what I'm saying? So because people
Yeah.
need to see this. And it did. I was saying people are beginning to watch this and people are like, what the hell is going on? It's
Well,
like turning
yeah,
the whole non-duality upside down, you know what I'm saying? And
yeah. And I think it's because it takes away all the labels.
it does, yeah.
And then when that happens, whatever experience you have,
Hmm.
regardless of what it is it.
Yeah.
And then you have a felt experience of something that
It's
is
palpable. You don't have
it's
to believe
you.
what I say, you know what
No,
I'm saying? Yeah.
yeah, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Which is to me like, and it's so funny because they talk about how simple it is, right? But you're like, yeah, well, I must be doing it wrong because it doesn't feel very simple.
And they'll keep on saying this, and like, what's this? Right?
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah,
Or
yep,
they'll keep on saying that there's no one there or whatever, right?
right. No, and I've
But
heard
people are
that
like,
too.
but it feels like there's someone here.
Right. And it's just so funny because it's like the way it kind of hit me, which I did think was like kind of ridiculous. I was
Yeah.
like, really? I was like, this is what it is. Okay. It's just that like, yeah, there's this body, whatever you want to call it, in this thing here, but all the words that I use to describe myself don't exist. So it's like
Exactly.
every single thing that has ever been used to describe me or my experience or the world or everything else is just made up sounds
Yeah. Yeah.
that can't actually depict what is happening because nothing can.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And
And it makes non-duality really ridiculous now, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's just a like it's just using it's basically like what do you call it? Like counterculture, like where there's like, hey, this is the norm, and we're just going to come up with a different word for
Yeah.
something, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's going to go in that route, and we're going to
Yeah.
be like, we're not conforming, we're a bunch of nonconformists, but we meet on Thursdays and we all have brunch and we hang out.
That's
We
right.
don't conform with the world and society,
And
but we all
this
love.
is our ideology that there's no one here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then the other counterculture we're like we don't like that. We call it
Yeah,
awareness,
yeah, but
right?
then
So
it's the same shit. It's
it's the
just like
same shit.
it just has a different like flavor,
Yeah.
or and then I think that's like anything in life
Yeah.
when you have like two, when everything is, what do you
Yeah,
call it?
and it's the same thing
Polemic.
with marketing and everything, right?
Yep.
You have like even in music and everything, you'll come up with a clean cut singer and you'll
Mhm.
create the counter, which is the rebel, right?
Yep.
But both are pop music.
Yep. And they're
Yeah,
both popular, or they're popular at different times because
that's
one
right.
person gets stale, and so the
Yeah,
other one comes in and they're like, oh, it's
that's
new,
right.
it's
Yeah,
fresh. And
exactly. Yeah,
nobody takes that like big picture look of like we've been doing this same charade for like 100,000 years and like nobody seems to notice.
exactly. And if you look at belief systems, that's the same thing. There's
Mhm.
a belief, and then even a non-belief is a belief.
Of course.
And then
You just
if you look at, what's happening in non-duality, there's a teaching. They're like, oh, this is not a teaching. Both are the same.
yeah. Well, now that it's getting kind of trendy, which is kind of, in a weird way, I'm like, okay, whatever. If people figure out any of these things on any sort of level, it's going to benefit them as long
Yeah.
as they don't like, take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Which I always think of like, and this is my own personal
Yeah.
mantra, but like, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Like, I don't
Exactly.
mean it's like, like
That's what happened to me as a spiritual teacher. I was not having fun anymore. So, I went out at night and had fun, which is
yeah, right, right.
which
But
destroyed
it's
the you know what I'm saying, the double life now, right?
yeah,
Because
yep.
it have to
And,
be this way,
right.
right?
And there's this judgment that's inherent, whether you are like putting it on yourself or the community is or whatever, because they
Yeah,
create you into this like Uberman, like,
that's right. Yeah, 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 yeah,
God, God
yeah.
person or
You're in a
whatever.
pedestal. You're wearing, like holy clothing and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and you got something that we don't, right? So
No,
and
exactly.
so
And
this is
that's
destroying that speaker seeker conundrum, right? Or that whole structure of, guru and teacher and all that kind of stuff. It's like I've been saying this a lot. I like it. It's like, before you're waiting for the sage to slap you with some clarity.
yeah,
Now you're slapping the sage.
I know. Well, and it's yeah, it's but on some level I can see the conundrum, because as long as you're using your thoughts and and you're functioning in this world, you know, you're never going to stop to figure that out.
Exactly.
Like it's
Yeah.
not going to happen naturally. Well, I mean, even if it did, you wouldn't know what it was, but nobody knows what it was, but you wouldn't be able to probably be like, oh, if I keep doing that, it'll
Yeah.
just unfold naturally. It's like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
whoa, what was that? And then you're like, oh, I need to go back to what everyone else is saying because I don't want to be crazy, right? So it's like you're
That's
immediately
what
gonna
it is.
like,
Yeah. Like
yeah,
even people that have listened to me before and they're challenged with what I do now. And they're like, oh, why don't you go back into your clarity, Emerson, when you were speaking more clearly? I'm like, I don't need to speak about clarity now. I don't need
I
to do, I can show it now. You know what I'm saying?
right, and like, it's just so funny. Like, why does it have to be anything?
It has to be structured in a way, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And that's what the structure of the personality is, right? It's made up
Yep.
belief system. So it latches onto another belief system so that it can feel that it's real.
Yeah.
So someone
So,
basically declaring that there's no one here, that makes them feel real. Someone declaring that it's all awareness, that makes them feel real or true. But
right,
who
which
are we
is
fooling?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the question, because I get this a lot too, because I've had people call me like nihilistic or whatever,
Yeah.
like I'm like I don't think it's like that at
No.
all. I think it's like I'm okay with it just being this.
Yeah.
And that includes all the darkness too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All
Yeah.
the bad stuff has just as much like room as all the good stuff
Hmm. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's part of the whatever this experience is, or
Yeah. It's a
whoever's running the
dualistic
show, or
ride, you know what I'm saying?
whatever the thing is, you got all of them. You could do anything,
Yeah,
on some level, which there is freedom there. It's just that it doesn't feel like it because you have to let go of the identity.
that's right. Yeah.
So the person that wants the freedom is the identity, and it can't ever get it,
It's
which
an
is just
identity looking for another identity, basically, is what's happening,
yeah,
right?
one
So
that's like I don't even know, right? Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
people are looking to escape life basically by
Right.
or trying to negotiate with it by saying that when the me drops away or when the self gets realized, then all my problems will be solved.
And it's so funny because if you really think about that, that's no different than anything else anyone has ever done in this world to try to find peace or
Exactly.
happiness.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
no different than like trying to become a doctor. It's no different than getting a
No, yeah.
girlfriend. It's no different than like,
The
using
TikToker.
drugs or cocaine or alcohol. Yeah, whatever it is,
Yeah,
like to find some sort of way to escape what
that's what
is.
it is. Yeah. That's what it is. And what's escaping is not even there.
No, right. That's kind of part of the whole thing anyways. You're that's what you chose to do, kind of in a weird way. Like this is the ride you're on. You're on the escape ride.
That's right. Yeah. And it's beautiful now though, right? There's, you
Mhm.
know, I don't have that super blissful, like helping others thing anymore, but it feels authentic.
Yeah,
I'm
yes, I
so
think yeah.
content,
Yeah.
right? So content. It's like all the
Yeah.
bullshit went away because
Yeah.
I was really living a life of BS, basically, because I was, saying
Yeah.
things that I didn't really believe, to be honest with you, and I was trying to believe. This does
Yeah.
not require any belief or non-belief, basically.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is great. And I think the idea that, that's available all the time. And it
It is,
is. I
yeah.
think it's a little scary because, the idea of it in your mind, the person that's running the show without realizing there's no person is not going to be want to be authentic for all the reasons that nobody wants to be authentic normally. But think of how awesome we all feel when we are. Like, you have
Yeah.
that true friend or that person that you can divulge all your stuff to, and
Yeah.
then they don't bite your head off or nothing
Yeah.
bad happens. And you just feel like this huge release of like, oh, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. It's almost like you can almost admit all of your flaws and everything, and it's perfect.
Yeah, because they're not real anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, not like who decided what a flaw is, right?
Exactly. What's that even, right? So things don't make sense, and that's why it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when you really think about it too, it's like I heard you say this to somebody, but I'd never thought about it before. But I was like if I'm really thinking about how like legs work and feet work and stuff, like if I had to like operate that as somebody as like an AI or somebody that was programming it and like
Yeah.
going in there, that'd be extremely difficult to do. And
Yeah.
like and I don't even think it's just happening, you know.
Yeah.
And I've
Like,
had more and more of those
like moving your
moments.
hand. Are we thinking about this? No, it just
No,
happens. You know what I'm saying?
no.
Our eyes blink like 10,000 times. Do we
Oh yeah.
program?
No, we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I think like as for me, I was having more and more of these kind of clear moments and stuff where I really didn't feel like I was doing anything.
Yeah.
And it was really crazy how much it was just going.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even speaking, like, or I was stuff was happening, and it was like it was really kind of cool because it was very much lighter and more it was more enjoyable. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like I just gotta let I gotta let the AI do its thing and like
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever.
I've always used this example. It's like your whole life you think that you are a good or a bad driver, and then you realize that the car is driving by itself.
Yeah, yeah. You're not even in the car. You're like in the trunk.
You're no no the way that explains like it's not even like a real car. It's like one of those like like mall cars that just
Oh,
goes around. You put like
yeah,
a coin there. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, exactly. You're like wondering why we keep going around the circle again.
Yeah. And you don't notice it because that's what thoughts are. It just goes keeping it going. It's a ride, basically, right? So it's like a joyride until it gets nasty when you want to get out
Right.
of it.
Well, and I think in my experience, as a psychologist, it's pretty traumatic and sad how like destructive thoughts are. Like just in general, like
Yeah.
how often people talk about their thoughts and the ones they have
Yeah.
and like versus I mean, I'm sure people have good thoughts too or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
we want to call them, but I never hear
Yeah.
about them.
I know, me too.
like I doesn't feel like they're running the show, like so yeah. I've been just like, well, let's just try to find ways to think less, or
Yeah.
or not even, or maybe whatever. If we're not thinking less, not believing it, not identifying with it, just letting it be there. Because yeah, it's
Like
really
it's like harm reduction, right? The thoughts, like a thought reduction. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Because it can
And
be
there's
so addictive, right? So
yeah, no, and I think that's a good way of putting it too, because you get used to it. It just becomes very normal.
yeah,
Like that you kind of narrate your whole life, right?
yeah,
Like why like I look over and I have to be like, that is a door. Like,
that's right. Yeah,
like
it's like
who am
an
I telling that
AI,
to?
right? It's like a Siri, right? That's kind of like, hmm, there's a ceiling. Emerson's waking up.
I
He's
know.
getting to get some coffee, right?
He doesn't like that coffee. He
He
wishes
doesn't
he
like
had
that
that other
coffee.
coffee.
He thinks he should lose some weight. That kind of thing, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right. Exactly. He's right. He should.
He's
No,
he should
it's
run
like,
for 2 hours today.
oh my God. Yeah, and it's like who are we
Ooh,
talking?
summer's over. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I do tell people this sometimes because it helps when they like to demystify like psychotic disorders and stuff
Yeah.
a little bit
Oh
because
yeah.
I'm like I'll always be like, you see somebody on the street and they're talking to themselves, right? But what's the difference between them and you? And they'll be like,
Mm,
"Oh, they're crazy." And I'm like, "No, you're just saying it in your head.
that's right.
There's absolutely
Exactly.
no difference."
Exactly. I had a relationship with someone with schizoaffective disorder,
Oh, okay.
and I'm like seeking is exactly like a
Yeah.
schizoaffective disorder, right? It's
Yeah.
just there's just an admission that it's an illness, and I just keep it. You know what I'm saying? That,
Yep.
and it felt like psychosis, like my life really fell apart, right? Because of my psychosis in seeking of looking for something that already is.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if you know that on some fundamental level, it's so easy to fall back into the pattern
Oh
because
yeah.
everybody and their dog, this is just like, this is what is happening for
Yeah.
the world. So it's like, you kind of have to like, you know, find
And
a way
it's
to,
gonna be funny, right? One time I was walking around, I'm like, the world is mad. Oh my goodness. The world is mad.
yeah, it's
It's gone mad, right? It's like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like, what, when you're trying to be sane in a mad world, like, what is that? What's the definition of psychosis when
yeah,
this sanity is defined by people who are insane?
exactly. It's
Yeah.
wild. It's wild.
Oh,
It's so
oh.
wild. It's just like, when this, because I was such a heavy duty seeker and I was so depressed. I had so much anxiety, right? So I quit the seeking altogether. When this finally collapsed, you know what I'm saying? When it just kind of like, I was speechless. I just didn't know what to say. I was stunned. I was just like,
Yeah, and it's funny too because I was like,
because I was so invested in it. You know what I'm saying?
right, yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I had the same feeling. Like, I like have my whole YouTube thing has all these non all these things, and I was like, the other after that happened, I was like sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I don't even know what to watch anymore. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what to do. It's like I don't like I guess I'll listen to music.
Yeah.
Like what? Like uh
I
you know,
haven't even listened to non-duality in like 7 years, right? So
oh, I believe it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my stuff right now is just I have a lot of music now on my YouTube. So it's
Yeah, which I've been, yeah, and I like music and I've always liked music,
it's almost
but you
like
just
back to
get,
sanity.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's so weird because you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this like this has been such a part of your life, even though
Yeah.
you weren't really going anywhere. It was also creating you some sort of like carrot or some sort of
Yeah. And if you
movement. Oh,
notice, you know what I'm saying? I didn't notice. Like most of the teachers and speakers are dangling carrots, aren't they?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And it's so funny because they'll talk about like, oh, we can't, it's ineffable and it's indescribable, but it's amazing. And it's like, it's like you just
It's
said that, but what,
stunning.
it's so beautiful and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like it blows your mind
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah.
and there's all these like things about like visual stuff, and it's like, oh, then you can't drive and you get like, and it's so weird because that's what I was expecting, and I had
Yeah.
these different experiences that were kind of similar, like that made me like question things, but then
Yeah.
also at this point they weren't like fixed, they just happened and then they were
Yeah.
gone. And so I was
And it's
like,
good that you're skeptical. It's good
yeah,
that you're skeptical. So you can, weed through the bullshit basically, right? Because
yeah,
I
there's
was
a lot of
skeptic.
there.
Oh my
There's a lot of
goodness, there's so much bullshit out there, right?
yeah.
So yeah,
And I think it's like, for me, I always felt like I even like was a little nervous booking this because it was the same idea. I was like, well, I know that there's something here because I've experienced it, but at the same point, like probably just gonna sit and talk about nothing for an hour because
yeah.
there's nothing to talk about. But part of me was like, well, at least if like there's a way to like, and I know
Well,
this is just
James, if you pay $20,000, I will put you into my inner circle.
I'm sure you would. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of like yard work I could do and uh,
I have an
maybe
ashram, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, no, of course.
That's
I think that shit happens all the
it
time. I was just
does.
thinking
It
about that.
does. It does. And they don't even have this. clarity they just dangle the carrot and someone believes it and someone, well, you know what I'm saying? Because right now,
Yeah.
if I tell you that you have clarity, or you're like, what is he talking about now? So it's almost like a, you know,
No.
um,
Well, and like I'm like, what's clarity? So then you just like what happens
yeah,
then,
that's right.
Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how could you possibly define something that I can only experience without words
exactly. That's
that
what it
no one
is.
else can, it's like
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That
if
that
I
that's
can't even
why.
express it or explain it, how the hell are you going to?
Yeah, exactly. I know. And that's what I'm saying. There's equanimity here. There's equality. It's
Yeah.
not something that I've given to you. It's not something that I
No.
passed on to you. It's not a knowledge. It's not a belief. It's not a hypnotism. You're a psychologist. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, no. Yeah. And I mean, I think that helps a little bit because you can kind of tell like but there is something there, and that's the part that's like on some level, like regardless of how people get here, and I think you can get to this
Yeah,
I don't know, whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
in a million different ways. I don't think it
yeah,
takes any sort of whateverness.
yeah,
And then I think that's why people probably latch on to whatever belief they were following
yeah,
beforehand
yeah. They get a
because
taste
it
of a
makes
little bit of
sense.
it.
Yeah.
They get a
And they
taste
don't
of
know
it.
how to describe it. So they're like, well,
Yeah,
these people said it's that. So that must
that's
be what
right.
it is.
Well, come
Yeah.
to my retreat. You know what I'm saying? And energetically, I will hand it to you. That kind of thing. You know what
I
I'm
know.
saying?
I know.
So it becomes this
And like, what the hell
rarefied.
is energy, right?
What the hell is energy, right? It's all bullshit now, isn't it?
I know, like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is that? It's a
At
it's a
least
wavy feeling, and I'm like, what?
what? Yeah. And that's what it is, right? Like, like I even admit that even my talks, I'm saying it's just all
Yeah.
blah 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 blah, right? It's
Well,
not
right.
I'm not trying to put myself higher or lower because there's no higher and lower. And that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like such a relief. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It's so funny, right? In the beginning, when people started seeing this in the YouTube, the comments were wild, right? Because they're like, instead of kind of like saying, what the hell? And people are like
They
saying,
were mad.
they were, yeah. I
Yeah.
got like some letters like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, you're like shitting on my belief system. I don't like that.
Exactly, yeah. Or they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't really resonate with him anymore. Like I think, who cares about
Yeah.
resonate? Like it's people are so caught up in their delusions, right?
Yeah.
And
And
when they finally see it, yeah,
I find that with psychology too, because it's really funny because it's kind of the same thing. And I've done this with like anxiety disorders a lot too, because people, if they've had one for a really long time, and anxiety disorders are really great because they're really easy to fix or
yeah,
treat. You don't really fix anything
yeah.
because when you face the thing you're afraid of, when the fear is
Hmm.
just a thought and the thing doesn't happen, immediately it goes away,
That's
right?
right.
Like
Yeah,
it's just hilarious because
yeah.
that's all it takes. But when people identify as an anxious person, they don't want to give it up. In fact, they
Oh
will
my goodness.
argue with you. They will
Yeah,
argue
that
with
was
you.
my identity, dude. That was my identity. That was my secret to myself that I kept for myself because that kept me
Yeah, it's like,
imperfect.
yeah, and it's also like then that's what they know. It becomes comfortable, and it's like
Yeah,
and I've challenged people, and they get so mad, but I'm like, you don't have to believe me if you don't want, but you just what I want you to do is to just accept that this is something that you are doing,
yeah,
and if you want to be okay with that, that's great. That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't care. I just want you to know that you'll never get your anxiety will never go away as long as you identify as somebody that has anxiety.
Exactly. That's what it is. When you believe it, you know what I'm saying? When you're identified with that belief system that you have
Yeah.
anxiety, you'll never get rid of it.
No,
Right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you ask them what anxiety is too, they'll tell you all these different things. And
Yeah.
it's like, not there, there's like none of that's not what I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Right. It's so funny because it's like everything is like this. You can see it now all over the place. It's oh my God.
Yeah.
Like everything. It's
Everything.
just like it's like,
Everything. And the same thing with trauma, because you know what I'm saying?
oh yeah.
I have worked with trauma and all that stuff when trauma was getting really, really popular, hooked up with some famous trauma, you know, um, people, you know what I'm saying? And now I don't even see it. Do you see it?
Trauma?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. It's simple, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's what I would say is, yeah, it's just a belief.
It's just a belief. Yeah.
I mean,
It's the
the
same thing with
experience.
anxiety, right? When you
Yeah,
believe it,
Or
That
depression.
yeah,
Depression's a really hard one too, because there's a lot of different symptoms and it's not
yeah,
clear what, like with anxiety, it's a little easier because you can identify what the person's anxious about.
yeah,
So then it's easier to like face
yeah,
the anxiety. But with depression, it's like it's this myriad of things that are all happening, and your person's
yeah.
like, oh, life sucks. And it's like, I always think of like, well, life sucks because you think it sucks.
Mm-hmm,
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you believe it sucks, right? Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Well, then it sucks.
yeah.
Simple as that. Because it's really true, right? Like
Yeah,
if you didn't have the ability to change anything in your life, if you
yeah,
couldn't change any of it, but you had to pick some words to describe it, and how whatever words you picked, that was what it was going to be
mm-hmm,
like.
yeah,
What would you pick?
yeah,
Because that's the truth.
yeah,
This it just is this, whatever it is,
yeah,
and however you decide to describe it is what you're going to feel or what you're going to think or how
yeah.
whatever. Even the feelings and thoughts are so interrelated anyways. It's like if you're thinking a
It
certain thing,
is. Well, the moment that you have a feeling, it gets hijacked by an idea
right,
right
because
away. You know what I'm
it's
saying?
just a sensation. And in
It,
fact, like the more you feel whatever
yeah.
sensations you have, a lot of times they change.
I have some people that I've talked to that have chronic pain and everything, and they report back a few months later. They're like, I didn't even know what happened. You know what I'm saying? Goes because I'm not identified with that chronic idea of pain anymore. And
Yeah,
or people that basically said that, you know what, I thought I had 10 years of depression and I don't see it anymore.
yeah,
That kind of thing.
exactly.
It's very
No,
immediate,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's just really kind of crazy
Hmm.
because it's like you
That's why
know
a
what
lot of I've been a lot of psychologists has booked me. They're like, what the hell?
I know, right? And it's like you want to help people, but it's hard because it's like these beliefs are so strong, and a
Yeah.
lot of times they're being, reinforced constantly by like everybody. So,
Yes. And there's
um,
always a new thing that's trendy,
yeah.
like
Oh my
new
God.
levels, new
Oh,
whatever.
Jesus
And it's
Christ.
just going to be, it's just a never ending seeking.
Mhm.
It's like, the only way to feel peace is to get out of the circus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I'll use the word acceptance, which, like it's the same with a
Yeah.
word or whatever, but it's just like the idea for me was like, well, you know, if you are okay, and I never use good or, whatever, I just use okay because
Yeah.
okay people don't feel like it's good. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. That
Yeah.
seems more neutral. So
Yeah.
it's like if you were just okay with the way things are, then you're fine.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
It's very simple.
Yeah. And then honestly, like you can't predict anything because we know that. You have no idea what's
Hmm.
going to happen. We know that.
Hmm.
And you are okay with whatever happens because that's just what's happening
Yeah.
because you are okay. So what happens is different from you.
Yeah.
Like or like from, and we're still using the you and stuff because these people
It's
aren't going to
okay.
be able to drop that. They're just there.
Yeah.
They'll be like, you're crazy. What? So that's the
Yeah.
thing. But people can get that. And they actually like, they'll be like, oh my God, I never thought about it like that. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is intuitive too. Like people know on some level that it's all
This is
bullshit.
inherent. This is
Yeah.
inherent. This
Yeah.
clarity is inherent, but you can't speak about it.
No.
That's the
Or you,
thing.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
But
say it
even,
in words.
yeah, not really, but they get it. They're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And I'm like, I know,
Yeah.
see?
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of fear around letting go of their problems
Oh
because
yeah.
that
That's their
is what,
identity.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And our
It's a part
world
of the
is,
structure that people hold on to because they don't want to lose sight of the that original delusion of I.
yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah,
It's guarded heavily, right? That
yeah,
I feel this. I had a session earlier with this lady that is just she just but I basically said, why don't we just take away the I, see what happens? And then she just went, she goes, this is embarrassing. I thought I was smart. Like this has nothing to do with smartness.
no,
No.
no, of course not. Yeah, no. And really, if
Yeah,
you think about it, what is smartness?
exactly. It's just a thought.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And some people are better at thoughts
Yeah, yeah.
than other people.
Yeah.
Not that that's super helpful,
I know.
but in fact, in our culture, it's like people get that gets just it's a status thing, and it's
It
oh, it's so
is, yeah. And this is
obnoxious.
just sobriety from the word high.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. The belief psychosis, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
The thought spell. That's basically it.
So do you just kind of like, keep trying to, I know you're not really abiding anything and it is kind of what it is, but I do find that like there's periods where like I'll kind of get stuck back in the old stuff. And so is it like
Eventually that just diminishes, you know what I'm
just
saying?
falls away?
Because
Okay.
you've been thinking for quite a long time in your life, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like
Yeah.
you might
Yeah.
relapse even someday, you know what I'm saying? You're like, what the
Yeah.
hell,
No,
Emerson?
no.
Right?
Because I had this happen this like I woke up early and I was like I knew I booked a session and it was like all of a sudden it was like I hadn't had a lot of
Yeah.
this like
Like a coup
crazy thoughts.
d'etat trying to take over. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts. I was like, holy shit, like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I
Yeah,
even
yeah.
was like, I was like doing the thing. I was like trying, and I was like, holy shit, like this is just like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Because again, it will not give up without a fight, right? Because
yeah,
it's been employed, you know what I'm saying? Then you're firing it basically or
yeah,
retiring it. And it will try to go back to work, you know what I'm saying? It can like, okay, let's
yeah,
go to the next. You're like,
yeah.
what
It's like,
next?
what are we gonna ask him? What about
Yeah,
this? What do you think
yeah,
about
yeah.
that? What about that? And it was
Yeah.
just like,
It wants to
and
be
I was
involved in
like,
its own
ooh,
demise, but it's not even there to see its own demise. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
it doesn't even exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I mean, it's crazy because none of it does, and that's so fucked up.
It is. It is. But I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to say,